Well, hello there and welcome to today's webinar, COVID-19 and climate change versus the economy. I'm Mike Agron, and I will be your moderator and one of your hosts for today's webinar, and we've got a fantastic amount of information to share. So I'm not going to waste any time. I want to get started, and again, welcome everybody. I see a lot of folks that have come online. I see Warren Bonta, I see Zachary Suchanek, Myra Bennett, Joyce Klauback, Joy Alexander, David Abelson. Hi, David, our president of Renaissance, Dina Hansen, Ann Shaw, a whole bunch of folks. Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming. Well, now it's my pleasure to bring to the microphone our president-elect, Ken Cross. Will officially welcome everybody, and then we're going to bring Tom on in just a few minutes and get the show started. So, hi, Ken, how you doing?
Okay, very good. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Sacramento Renaissance Society Summer Speaker Series. My name is Ken Cross. I'm the chairperson for the Membership, Diversity, and Community Engagement Committee. Renaissance Society was founded in 1986. This is our 34th year providing lifelong learning, socializing, service, and fun for adults of the greater Sacramento region. Our Summer Speaker Series began in 2005. This is our 16th year offering these summer presentations. In recent years, we've held this series in person at the Scottish Rite Masonic Center on J Street in East Sacramento, and due to mandated physical distancing protocols, we've moved to our online virtual meeting platform for the 2020 summer semester. So today we have over 1,050 people registered for this presentation. I want to give a special thanks to our Summer Speakers Series planning team who have worked tirelessly in recent months to organize these speaking presentations: Mike Agron, Muffy Frank, Mary Ellen Burns, Cindy Suchanek, and Alan Keon. If you like today's presentation, please invite your friends, family, and associates to participate. You'll receive a thank you email for attending today with links that you can forward to your friends so they can register for our future week's presentations. Our membership site is opened, actually opened on June 1st. Over 500 people have already joined for the 2020-2021 academic year. For existing Renaissance members, please remember to renew your memberships. For guests, please check out our website to find out more about the Renaissance Society's lifelong learning programs and services. Simply Google Sacramento Renaissance Society, go to our website, and explore our myriad of lifelong learning opportunities. So starting on Monday, July 6th, we'll launch a Monday speaker series for the Renaissance Society members only. This is a 6-week Monday speaker series during July and August, and will feature some of our most popular Renaissance Society seminar speakers and presenters. And you'll actually find today in the chat room, we'll be sending you the link to that. So go to the Renaissance Society website once again, click on your new online summer series that you see, the tab with the red arrow, and to see the list of presenters and to register. So back to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Ken. And now it gives me great pleasure to bring on Dr. Tom Suchanek. And Tom, I just made you presenter, so if you want to share your screen, go for it. Let me tell you a little bit about Tom before he begins his talk. He's a marine ecologist from UC Davis, and he spent the last 40 years conducting research around the globe, primarily environmental contaminants. For the past 20 of those years, he has focused on one of the greatest threats to human civilization, climate change. He earned his PhD from the University of Washington in Seattle. He's held diverse appointments with UC Davis, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the U.S. Geological Survey. He's also spent 7 years as the Western Regional Director of the National Institute for Global Environmental Change for the Department of Energy. Now, I worked with Tom on this presentation that he's going to be doing today, and I have to tell you, it is very impressive. The amount of knowledge he has, his expertise, and most importantly, his passion for the subject is second to none. So Tom, welcome. I'm now going to turn the microphone over to you, and if you want to turn your webcam on, we're ready to go.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Let me see if I can handle that task.
And as Tom is doing that, there he is. Okay.
Hi, folks. Are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that introduction. I'm truly honored to be here today, although remotely. I wish I could be hugging all you people. And I appreciate you tuning into this presentation. Unfortunately, today we have a very complex set of crises that are playing out simultaneously. As you well know, still fresh in our minds is the tragedy that befell George Floyd, and my heartfelt sympathies go out to his family, with hopes that his tragic death can bring all of us somewhat closer to resolving systemic racism that exists in many places throughout our country and actually in the world for that matter. However, keeping that in our hearts, my goal today is to provide you with an update on two huge global crises. One, the COVID-19 pandemic, and two, our ongoing attempts to deal with the ever worsening climate change impacts. I will show you that conceptually, they are not only very similar to each other, but in so many ways, including their effects on our economy, but that we also need to deal with them in much the same way, with all the associated challenge that goes with those issues. In the first part of my presentation, I'll address some of the impacts that both COVID-19 and climate change have. In the second part, I'll show you the innovative solutions that we have to deal with these crises. Today, I'll also be showing you a number of data-rich slides, so I'm going to ask all of you to put on your thinking caps and follow along carefully. Because, yep, you guessed it, we're going to have a quiz at the end of this presentation, so keep your attention up. This presentation will also be archived on the Renaissance Society website, as well as my own website, tomsuchanek.net, so you can review it later if you have missed something in the details. So without further delay, let's get to it. Before we launch into the presentation itself, I'd like to take a few minutes to ask you a few questions. So Mike, I'd like to poll the audience.
All right, Tom, what do you think?
Looks like a couple of years has taken the cake there. Nobody thinks it's going to get done in 6 months. And some people think it'll never get done. And that's probably close to the truth. As long as we have a virus vaccine, I think we'll be able to cut down on the impacts. But I think 2 years is pretty much what we're expecting in terms of the worst impacts.
Terrific.
Thank you, guys.
All right, I'm going to go hide the results. And I think we have another poll you wanted to launch too, Tom.
Yep, let's try the second one.
All right, here comes the second poll, folks. The question is, how concerned are you about the influence of climate change on your way of life and that of future Earthlings? All right, 72% have voted. Tom, you ready to see the results?
I am. I'm fascinated by these results. Let's see.
Here we are.
Extremely concerned, somewhat concerned, and doesn't concern me at all. So these are very comparable to the Yale Communication Institute that's studying climate change and people's impressions of climate change. And I think you fall exactly in the same realm as those identified by Yale University. So that's nice. Helps me understand the audience.
Well, I'm going to hide this and turn it back to you, and it's your show until we come to a midpoint and go for some more polls. You ready?
I'm good. Okay, should we be scared? People are very anxious about this. Lots of people are scared. They may have elderly parents that are not doing well or afraid of getting COVID. They may be out of a job. They may not have enough money to buy food. So lots of people are scared, and not unreasonable. A lot of places have kids that are being homeschooled. So let's take a look at Ben, who's a 7-year-old being homeschooled. It's not going good. My mom's getting stressed out. My mom is really getting confused. We took a break so my mom can figure this stuff out. And I'm telling you, it's not going good. I think this is probably happening in many houses and many homes around the world. This is not easy stuff. People are crammed and cooped up into one place, and it's tough. So let's take a look at this. We have two invisible enemies that are operating on the same spatial scale. That is, globally. We can't detect either one of them using normal human senses like sight, smell, taste, or touch. And for COVID over here, we have a biological agent, a virus that's extremely contagious, spread by humans, and it operates on the time scale of days to weeks to months. On the other side, we have climate change, mostly mediated by a chemical agent. One of the big ones is carbon dioxide, 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. It's also very powerful. It's a powerful heat trapping gas, also spread by humans, and it operates on a different time scale from months to years to decades. And both of these have their greatest effects on the poor and the vulnerable. And I'm just going to put a little highlighter in here, laser pointer. There we go. And so for both, they're also increasing at exponential rates. COVID-19, as we saw in about March 22nd, we had about 446 deaths in the US. About 5 days later, those deaths increased to 1,200. Another 12 days after that, we had 18,000. So that's an exponential increase in those numbers. Let's take a look at climate change, CO2 primarily. This is a graph that shows the atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over time for the last 1,000 years. If we look at this red line here, it's been bumping along at what we say is about 280 parts per million until we reached the Industrial Revolution somewhere in the late 1700s, early 1800s, when we started burning fossil fuels. We started with coal. So we started burning coal, and that's producing carbon dioxide. All the fossil fuels are producing carbon dioxide. And as we did that, we increased the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, growing higher and higher until we are here today at about 415 parts per million. That's not anything special. It's just where we are right now. And it just means that it's increasing really, really fast. So let's take a close look. Both crises represent a human, physical, and psychological health issue, a societal instability issue, an economic security issue, a national security issue, an environmental impacts issue, and unfortunately, we also have political issue. That's very unfortunate because we can't make any progress when this happens. So here's the world saying there's no way we can shut everything down in order to lower emissions, slow climate change, and protect the environment. And Mother Nature answers back, here's a virus, go practice. So that's what I think we're doing right now. And we're probably going to be doing that for a long time. All right, so for many people, this is how they think about both COVID-19 and climate change. They tend to ignore it. They either don't understand it or don't want to think about it. They put their head in the sand. So let's give a couple examples here. For COVID-19, this is well into the time at this point in April 2nd when people were told to start sheltering in place and wearing masks and identifying, where they need to be. And obviously, they shouldn't be on the beach like this, crowded in a beach in Florida. On the other hand, over here, we have the author Wayne Weeks, who wrote the book, The Global Warming Climate Hoax. Many of the climate deniers are out there pushing the message that there's no such thing as climate change. And we're sort of working with that in terms of trying to get some understanding scientifically and have people understand that as well. So, New York Times Memorial Day edition came out. We had nearly 100,000 deaths already. And they published the names of about 1,000 people on that day. So at this point, now this week, we have 115,000, over 115,000 deaths, and globally there's about 411,000 deaths. So we've known about this stuff for a long time, basically. A couple of years ago, the Smithsonian magazine published an article about the pandemic 100 years ago. And that was the Spanish flu, 1918. And that flu at the time infected about 500 million people, and it killed about 50 of those million people. It's a mortality rate of 10%. We're hoping that doesn't happen here. So our COVID-19 pandemic should not really have been so severe. The Obama administration had passed on to the Trump administration the White House Office of Global Pandemics, which Trump later dissolved, which caused us to lose time and not be as effective as what we had hoped. It's all about preparedness with these pandemics. The US intelligence officials warned President Trump at the time in January, but actions were delayed by about 6 weeks, all of February and half of March until things actually got going. And we still really don't have a national approach to this, which we should. So I'm going to show you some data here. So these are some impacts from COVID. I'm going to talk about cases on the top on a world view and talk about deaths on the bottom from more of a US view. So we can see where the hotspots are around the world. Europe is a huge hotspot. Saudi Arabia is pretty hot as well. Some places in Africa, Central America, and the US is one of the biggest hotspots. Right now, global cases are over 7 million and the deaths are over 400,000. For the United States, cases are over 2 million and the deaths are over 115,000. And the reality is that the US has less than 5% of the world's population, but about 30% of all the COVID cases and deaths. So we're sort of leading the pack here. Here's the new reported cases across the world daily. Now, this is just how many cases, new cases appear. This is not the cumulative amount. This is every day how many new cases appear. Up here we see the highest ever this last week. Increases per day, 134,000 are increasing per day, and they will be continuing to increase as people have opened up, as the governments have opened up. People are out in places they've not been in months, and we're expecting that to get higher and higher. Down below, in terms of the US, we have on April 16th, we had about 34,000 deaths, and we move over into today, we have 115,000 deaths. Now, you can see these are all countries here. If you can see that, they're kind of light lines, but these are other countries. And here's the US right here with this line, swamping and overwhelming all of the other countries in terms of the deaths that we have experienced. Let's go a little further. By September, the World Health Organization is anticipating that we will be over 200,000 deaths shortly in a couple months. So don't expect this to go away like the president has indicated. We will be seeing many, many more deaths in the United States. However, timing is critical, as I mentioned before, in terms of a pandemic. Most started sheltering in mid-March, like I mentioned, after we finally got something going. If this is May 3rd, we had 65,000 deaths. But if we had sheltered 1 week earlier, over here, we would have only had 29,000. We would have saved 36,000 lives if we started 1 week earlier. If we had started 2 weeks earlier, we would have probably avoided 83% of those deaths. So timing is critical, delays cost lives. Let's talk about some of the other impacts besides human health and lives. COVID has tremendous impacts, instability and volatility in our marketplace. Dow Jones Industrial Average had its largest point loss in history, almost 3,000 points on March 16th. A week later, it has its largest point gain in history, over 2,000 points in one day. So extremely high jumps. And just yesterday, the Dow Jones fell another 1,800 points, up and down, just crazy volatility. So we also have passed the largest stimulus or relief package in history, over $2.2 trillion on March 25th, and they're working on another one right now. Unemployment claims every week have jumped up from 3.3 million to 6.6, 6.6. They've been declining, but that's a total of over 44 million unemployment claims that are on the books right now. So they were projecting that by now we would have 17 to 20% unemployment. And because of what's happened, they've opened up, people are back in some jobs. We're probably down at about 13, 14%. Okay, what are the psychological effects of cabin fever? We've got instability in the market. People are anxious about their funds, anxious about where they're going to get their food. They have fear and panic. And there's hoarding. This is a grocery store in our local community, completely devoid of all paper products, paper towels, tissues, toilet paper, everything. And I'm not sure why people are hoarding this stuff, because in other countries they're hoarding yeast so they can rise bread. But the United States, we're hoarding toilet paper to finish their panic rooms. I don't understand it. It's also affecting the art world. You probably know about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse back in the 1800s. They represent conquest, war, famine, and death. Well, that's the way they were represented in 1800s. And today, this is what we have. Seriously, back to the toilet paper problem. So as we're reopening, we have to do that carefully. Some places are doing it, some places are not. This is a picture of a park in San Francisco, aerial view, where they have these 6 to 8 foot circles and people are remaining in those. And that's a great idea to identify and separate individuals from not passing the virus. Other places are not so hot, or they are hot. On May 18th, 48 states opened up in some form or another to regular business. And that is causing a hellish problem. They open up the beaches, bars, gyms, barbershops, churches, and the World Health Organization said within 2 weeks of reopening, they had the largest one-day rise in COVID cases. Greatest numbers were in the US. And California had the largest daily rise in new COVID cases just on June 5th this past week at 3,600. So this is what they're doing. As soon as they opened up, people were rushing to the beaches. Nobody's wearing masks. It's crazy, no social distancing whatsoever. And that same day, we had in Orlando, Florida, we had a 3,000 person block party. You've probably seen some of this. It's just insanity out there. They're not thinking, they're not doing anything that's reasonable in terms of what they should be doing. And that's why we're going to see a tremendous rise right now. And we are seeing a rise. This one, I think everybody's seen. The Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri on Memorial Day. This is when we were supposed to be sheltering, but just when they opened up, they're doing a great job at social distance. They're doing something social, but I'm not sure it's distancing. Unfortunately, President Trump is also demanding that the GOP convention in Charlotte, North Carolina, take place with no social distancing and no masks in a convention that has 20,000 people. And fortunately, the North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper says not happening there. So they're thinking of moving it to either Florida or Georgia. And now for all the Trump campaign rallies, attendees must agree not to sue the president if they get the virus. There you go. And unfortunately now also we have another crisis on our hands, the killing of George Floyd. So this has brought out hundreds of thousands of protesters and demonstrators in the streets. Many of them did not wear masks at all. And there was no social distancing. Even today, these are still from this last week. They're still protesting now, this week, right today. And many of them now are wearing masks, but still they're not social distancing. So we are also going to expect in another 2 weeks, we're going to expect an increase in the COVID cases from these people just massing into the streets for a very good cause, but it's going to cost them their health, some of them. So with these virus cases surging in huge numbers in some of these southern states in the country, we're in deep doo-doo here if this continues on much further. So opening up is one factor, the demonstrations are another factor, and we're going to see the results in another week or two. So let's move to climate change. What are some of the impacts of climate change? Well, we have increased extreme temperature fluctuations, extreme snowpack fluctuations. We've got extreme weather from storms, winds, tornadoes, and hurricanes, which cause extreme flooding. That extreme flooding will affect everything out there. I'm going to show you that in a little minute here. We also have extreme droughts, the opposite. We have extreme fires. We have extreme mudslides. We have rapid sea level rise. We have increasing El Nino events, which warms the oceans. We have increasing seasonality of changes, both in the ocean and on land. We have rising ocean acidification, which affects organisms that need to build their shells. And they can't do it because of the increased acid in the ocean. We have increasing extinction rates. About 200 species, we're losing about 200 species per day. And that's about 1,000 to 10,000 times normal background rate for extinctions. Many scientists are concerned that we're going to have the 6th mass global extinction, where we potentially lose 90% of all of our species. And some are concerned about increases in communicable diseases as well from climate change for many reasons. We'll talk about that some too. And what we're seeing overall is extreme and unpredictable events. This stuff is going on right now, this week. So this is not just in the future anymore. People used to think about, climate change happening in the year 2100. Well, that's not true. We're going to talk about that too, but it's happening daily. This week, things are happening. Tornadoes and heat range in the west. So here's I got to start with this because I want people to make sure they understand what's happening with the greenhouse effect. Here's the natural greenhouse effect, where the sun beats down on the earth, warms the earth, and then some of that energy is reflected back out into space. Some of them is trapped in the atmosphere by the presence of these heat-trapping gas, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, N2O, and methane, CH4. So that's the natural greenhouse effect. Without the natural greenhouse effect, we would not have warmth on the earth, and we would be an ice planet, basically. Now, here's the human enhanced greenhouse effect. Same thing, sun beats down on the earth absorbs some of that heat, some of it's re-radiated back out into space, but because we have an increased amount of these greenhouse gases, that absorbs more heat and is heating up the earth. So that's the basis of it. So let's take a look at what's happening with CO2, one of the biggest greenhouse gases, and temperature. So here's temperature on the left in the blue, here's carbon dioxide in the right in the orange, and you can see since the right after the Industrial Revolution started, about 1860 here, we have carbon dioxide increasing, starting to go up to an exponential increase. And we've got temperature, more variable, but temperature is following along, being correlated with the increase in carbon dioxide, right up to where we are now at about 416 parts per million, like I showed you before. So the last time CO2 concentrations were this high, humans didn't even exist. That was 800,000 to 20 million years ago. At that time, global temperatures were substantially higher. We had almost no ice on the planet, and sea levels were 100 foot higher. We're heading in that direction slowly. And this is being caused by the burning of fossil fuels. So let's take a look at what those fossil fuels are. This is the amount of carbon dioxide in billions of tons from basically the start of the Industrial Revolution on up to today. Beginning in the early 1800s, we started burning coal. That was the fossil fuel that carried us through and built this country. We ought to be very proud of that. Coal contributes about 42% of our carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Then we started doing oil. Oil is contributing about 33%, and natural gas after that, which is contributing about 19%. I'm going to leave cement alone because it's a more complex process and don't have time to really go into the details. But unfortunately, we are sending 100 million tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere per day. That's about 40 billion tons per year. Now, you wouldn't think that something that's a gas could be that heavy or have that much mass, but it does, and it's accumulating very, very quickly to our dismay and our impacts here. Unfortunately, that CO2 is causing this global warming that we're experiencing. And let's take a look at this. These are the 10 hottest years on record, and showing the increase from the Industrial Revolution. We're up to about 1.25 degrees centigrade. And these are the 10 hottest years again. 2019 was not the hottest year, it was the second hottest year, but 2016 was a very hot year. So we're continuing to increase here all through the last 10 years, basically. But the last 6 were actually the hottest 6 of those 10. So we're increasing hotness. Not only that, but a couple months ago, our January 2020 was the hottest January on record. Also, our February was the second hottest February on record. So going faster and faster, hotter and hotter. And we also have tremendous drought that's developing. So here's the Palmer Hydrological Drought Index, and they have different categories of drought. Going from the 1890s on through 2018, we have a mild drought in this level, moderate drought, severe drought, and extreme drought. Now, unfortunately, that didn't stop. In 2018, it got beyond the extreme drought situation. So the people at Palmer had to actually invent a whole nother category for beyond extreme drought. So they named it exceptional drought. So you can see this is getting worse and worse for the temperature as well as the droughts. Let's take a look at fires. You know fires very well here in California. I'm sure most of you do. This is fires from 1970s through today, 2017 or so. And This orange line is the average of the fire. This is the number of large fires over 1,000 acres on U.S. forest land. So back in the 1970s, there wasn't much happening there, very few relatively fires. And as we proceed further, it's very variable, but over the years, it has really increased tremendously. So this is where we're looking in terms of the number of fires increasing. And California's fire season has increased by 75 days, both before and after. We're expanding the across the Sierra Nevada. We're expanding the fire season. Pretty soon we may be at the full year fire season. And we're not alone. The Amazon rainforest has the same problem. In 2019, the Amazon rainforest supplies 20% of the Earth's oxygen, but in 2019, it also has 74,000 fires, tremendous loss in the Amazon rainforest. Now, that was 80% higher than in 2018. And unfortunately, President Bolsonaro is a nationalist, and he wasn't interested in having any other country help in putting out those fires, probably for economic reasons, because they chop down forests and grow cattle and palm oil for plantations. So he probably thought that that would be better for his economy. But taking away from the oxygen that we breathe and taking away from the carbon dioxide that the Amazon rainforest is taking out of our atmosphere, we need that Amazon rainforest. So let's look at some of the other impacts. Tornadoes. Tornado outbreaks are becoming much more abundant. The largest outbreaks, here's 1950 and here's 2017. And the number of really huge outbreaks is getting larger and larger. This is one that was in Florida in 2013. There was a water spout at that point that moved into land. So this is happening right now. We are experiencing huge tornadoes in the south, moving up and across the entire country, actually in the Midwest. So this is happening while we're talking here. And we're also getting extreme rain events called rain bombs. In 2015 in Kauai, we had this rain bomb, which dumped 15 inches of rain in 24 hours. That's a place that I would not want to be in, I'll tell you. And not only there, Phoenix, Arizona, same thing, another rain bomb in 2017. So these extreme events are happening because temperature is increasing, evaporating more of the water off of the ocean, and it's got to land somewhere. So here you go. Also, we're looking at increased effects from hurricanes. We're not seeing necessarily an increase in the number of hurricanes. However, we are seeing an increase in the intensity. So 2017, Cat 5, Harvey. 2018, Michael, Cat 5, Irma, Cat 5, Jose, Cat 4, Maria, Cat 5, Irma, Cat 5. These are all really huge, huge hurricanes. And they are causing massive destruction, both in property and lives. So here's the one that occurred recently, Dorian, a couple months ago in 2019 at the end of their season. This was a Category 5. It had 185 mile-an-hour winds and gusts to 220. But it was moving along at 1 mile an hour. What we're seeing with these hurricanes is that they're moving slower and they tend to stall in one place. So if you get 185 to 220 miles an hour for 24 hours, that's going to cause severe destruction. Now, unfortunately, we only have a Category 5 on our chart. We don't have Category 6. However, because of the winds and the intensity of this hurricane, if we had one, it would have been a Category 6. So again, we don't have the metrics to even document these things. So let's keep that in mind. So economics of climate change, what do we have about that? In 2018, we had 14 events that were over $1 billion. We have fires in the West, we have hailstorms, we have droughts, we have tornadoes, we have flooding, major storms and flooding up here. We have hurricanes down here. Those are just massive events over $1 billion. I'll show you the summary of that in a minute. This one here, 2018, we had $93 billion worth of losses. This is all NOAA data. 2019, another 14 events occurred. Same thing, we have fires in the West, massive flooding. Michigan experienced that, I think you probably saw it on the news. It showed two dams that broke, and those flooded the Dow Chemical Corporation site and the Superfund site, all those toxic chemicals bleeding out over the landscape. So we had more tornadoes and more hurricanes. The damage there, oh, we had five, that's the 5th consecutive year that we had over 10, over $1 billion events. And that one was $45 billion. So let's take a look at the long-term chart here. This is from 1980, over a 40-year period up to 2020. Those bars represent the number of billion-dollar events in different types of categories: cyclones, severe storms, freezing, flooding, winter storm, wildfires. And the lines right here indicate the economic damage that was occurring. So let's take a look at some of these. This one here in 2005 was $225 billion damage. This one here in 2012, $125 billion. And going closer to where we are now, that one in 2017, $322 billion. So they're getting more severe, more abundant, and all of these events are combining to make it a very expensive proposition. So that's for the loss of economic infrastructure. Let's take a look at human health and fatalities. World Health Organization put out a report in 2018 saying that right now, at that time, climate change was resulting in over 150,000 human deaths per year from the lack of clean air, drinking water, food, shelter, as a result of heat stress, malnutrition, multiple communicable diseases in these disaster areas, etc. However, now this report indicates that from 2030 to 2050, climate change will cause an additional 250,000 human deaths per year. And that's going to be from all of these causes, as well as from increasing global sea level rise, as well as geopolitical refugee situations. So I think we need to take a comedy break here for a second. Let's go here. I had to put this in here. Only in America do we accept weather predictions from a rodent, but deny climate change evidence from scientists. And sometimes that's the way I feel. I'll tell you, trying to fight this process. All right, enough comedy. Back to the reality. Sea level rise. We have tremendous amount of sea level rise already causing issues for many communities. So if we look back over the last 2,500 years, here's the sea level bumping along at about this level. And until we get again to the Industrial Revolution, here we are again, starting to burn coal and fossil fuels, when the sea level also all of a sudden started rising exponentially here. Same thing, rising exponentially, getting higher and higher. Global mean sea level had risen about 7 to 8 inches since 1900, and even faster, another 3 inches since 1993. Now, about 50% of that sea level rise comes from the melting of glaciers and ice caps. And another 50% comes from seawater expansion. You might not think that seawater could expand that much to really make the ocean rise, but it does. And another 50%, oh no, that's not right, no more. Okay, so what is happening out there in the oceans? We've got a lot of island nations out here, and I'm just going to give you a few examples. These are not all of them, but let's take a look here. This is Australia, this is Papua New Guinea, this is Hawaiian Islands over here. So the Carteret Islands have about 2,000 residents, and because their islands are already getting flooded, they have made arrangements to move their citizens to the mainland of Papua New Guinea. Tuvalu has about 10,000 residents, and they have negotiated to move their people, because they're getting flooded out, down to the South Island of New Zealand. In addition, the Kiribati or Kiribati Islands have about 110,000 residents, and they have negotiated with the higher islands of Fiji to move their residents down there. This is happening throughout many of these island nations. I've just given you a few. And it's not only affecting island nations, it's affecting some of the shoreline nations as well. In Shishmaref, Alaska, we have the Inupiaq Eskimos here, right on the shore. However, because the sea ice is disappearing in the Arctic, now the winter storms coming in with huge waves are destroying their villages. So they have to move back further inland to get away from that impact from rising seas and melting glaciers. And right now, we are looking at major catastrophes in terms of sea level in the future. Forced human population displacement, geopolitical refugee migration. This is going to happen in sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, Latin America, even the United States. So we're looking at up to more than 140 million people being geopolitical refugees by 2050. This is the stuff of wars. I'm sorry, this is the reality coming on at you. So let's take just take a peek at a couple of the things. This is Florida, the lower boot of Florida here. And by 2100, this part of Florida is going to be gone. Here's Miami right down here underwater. And this is Shanghai over here. Shanghai is about 26 million people. This is about the extent of Shanghai. This will virtually disappear. Okay. So these are the things that are going to happen, folks. We're going to have a lot of these issues coming up, and we need to solve it soon. So you've seen this curve before. This is the spike of COVID-19. We need to bend the curve to stop the spread. We need to get it down here. We need to lower that curve. So here's another curve that basically resembles that COVID curve. This is the curve of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, this one here. And what this is this carbon dioxide here, up to 40 billion tons a year. And this is time from 1980 on to the present day, 2020, and into the future. Each one of these lines is another model run that indicates how we can bend this curve and stop the spread of carbon dioxide. So in the year 2000, this is where we were. But carbon dioxide kept increasing in the atmosphere. We didn't do anything to stop it, and it's still increasing up until this point where we are now at 2020. So what's going to happen if we don't do something? If we do nothing? Let's see. If we do nothing, this is what's going to happen. We will have way more extreme events than we have now, and it's going to affect everybody on the earth in a very dramatic and drastic way. Let's go back to our curve and take a look at this. Each one of these dots here is another year. So this star over here is 2030. If we start now, if we started in the year 2000, we would have only had to reduce our carbon emissions very slightly at about 2% per year. That would have been very doable. However, we didn't do that. Carbon dioxide still keep increasing. So here we are now at 2020. And if we start now, which we haven't yet, we would have to start reducing our emissions of carbon dioxide by about 5%. If we don't do that up to 2030, if we don't do that and start only at 2030, we will have to reduce our carbon emissions by 9% per year to really get us down more quickly to where we need to be in time to avoid all of these extreme events and catastrophic impacts. So let's take a peek here. What do we need to do? Now we need a vaccine for COVID-19, and we think we probably will have one in 9 to 18 months. So let's hope that comes true. We're not sure that the safe distancing is doing it, or the number of people who are wearing masks is doing it, but we definitely need a vaccine. So hopefully we'll have a vaccine that will take care of that virus. And for climate change, we need something that resembles a vaccine as well. What do we need? I think we do have one, actually, something that is called carbon pricing, which is basically to increase the price of fossil fuels on a regular basis every year and favor the use of alternative energy sources. And if we develop a green economy, we can develop 20 million jobs right on the spot to develop alternative energy sources, solar, wind, all kinds of other alternative energies. So I think we have that vaccine, which is carbon pricing. If we inject that into the economy, I think we can do this. Well, who is doing carbon pricing around the world? Let's take a look. So this is a map of the countries that are actually applying carbon pricing. So you've got China, you've got Canada, we've got Argentina. We've got a lot of countries that are actually doing that, and the smaller circles are either states or provinces that are also doing that as well. So who are the big carbon emitters in the world? Which countries? So down here we have China, US, India, Russia, and Japan are the top 5. So who's doing it? Well, China is doing it, and the US is not. So we don't have a carbon pricing mechanism right now. India is not doing it. And Russia, the top three, Russia is not putting a price on carbon either. Japan seems to be doing okay. But we need to put a price on carbon or figure out some other way of reducing carbon dioxide emissions one way or the other. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the second half. But for now, I'm going to leave you with this. Be sure to wash your hands and all will be well. For the COVID, we have a crisis. We have a pandemic. We need to deal with it. We need to use all the tools in our toolbox to make sure that this doesn't spread and create a bigger problem. Already creating a recession. And that will take maybe years to resolve, but looming right behind it and much bigger a threat is climate change. So we can't avoid fixing this problem, both of those problems, but especially climate change. We can't put our head in the sand. So for this, I think we're going to take a break here. And Mike, if we have an option here, can we show another couple polls?
All right. Great job so far, Tom. I'm going to launch the third poll. Just don't touch that dial on your side, Tom, and here it goes. So, in your opinion, folks, what are the best ways to avoid contracting COVID-19? Please select all that apply. Is it washing your hands frequently? Is it wearing masks? Is it ingesting hydroxychloroquine? Getting testing frequently, or staying home as much as possible? There we go. All right. Now let me share the results. Tom, what do you think?
Well, I'm disappointed. I thought a lot more people would ingest hydroxychloroquine. But washing hands frequently, good. Masks, great. Staying home, good. Getting tested frequently. Okay, I think people are on the right track here. Hopefully they're doing that, not just voting on it. So yeah, great. Thank you.
Sure. Between the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change, which do you think will ultimately be more destructive? Just select one. COVID-19, climate change, or about equal? Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Now, quicker response on this one. 53% of the audience has voted. So I'm going to keep it open just a little bit longer and see where everybody weighs in. So we're now at about 65% of the audience. Hey, keep those questions coming in. We got a lot of questions in the queue, and like I said, I'm going to do everything I can at the end for the Ask the Experts section to cover off as many of these questions with Tom. All right, looks like we've got just about 67% of the audience voting. I'm now going to close the poll, share the results. Tom?
89% climate change. COVID, interesting. I think people understand that we're going to get rid of this, hopefully soon. And about equal, 9%. All right, fascinating. Thank you very much, folks, for doing that. I appreciate understanding where you guys sit on this. Talk about solutions. Talked about the impacts and the bad stuff. Let's talk about the good stuff. So first, I want you to let's renew and review what we talked about in terms of COVID. We need to use all the tools in our toolbox. We need to be smart. We need to pay attention to our symptoms. We need to practice social distancing early in the process, whenever we're told to, and especially wear masks. Absolutely critical. We need to wash our hands often. And then if you own a business or a commercial entity, probably would be good to take temperatures of people entering your business. Pay attention to symptoms. Get tested if you feel bad, or contact your physician, both for COVID and antibodies and antigens. Antigens are detecting parts of the virus, and antibodies are detecting those things that fight the virus in your body. And for opening businesses, do that slowly and methodically. So what's the bottom line? Bottom line is we need to bend the curve, stop the spread. We need to develop and implement a national strategy. Unfortunately, we don't have one of those. I'm sorry. And we need to develop an international cooperation and remain a member of the World Health Organization, which there's been some attempt to drop that. So these are essential things if we're really going to tackle this virus and this pandemic. So I want to give kudos to our pandemic heroes. The healthcare workers, the policemen, the grocers, the firemen, all those people who are really doing a fantastic job some of the organizations, the World Health Organization, the CDC, National Institutes of Health. And here's two people that have been really stellar. I have to give it to them. They're working under very difficult conditions. Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx have, I think, danced around and tried to do the best they could. Dr. Fauci just indicated this week, this was his worst nightmare, and it is not over yet, despite what other people may say. And I really have to also give kudos to Governor Andrew Cuomo, who really has done a superb job of very carefully opening up New York under tremendous stress and pressures of so many cases in his state. So kudos to all those people. Now we move into climate change. These are our climate change heroes right here, early ones. Scientists have known about CO2 and as a heat trapping gas for a really long time. And I'm not going to talk about all these this time. This is in our climate change course if you want to see it. But Eunice Foote was actually, this woman was actually the first person to link carbon dioxide to global warming back in 1856. Great lady amongst all these other guys. So this is another hero of ours, Dr. James Hansen. In 1988, he testified before Congress. He was the director of space studies at NASA, and he testified showing what the increase in temperature was on the Earth up to that point, and provided a model that predicted what would be the increase in temperature beyond that. So keep him in mind. We're going to talk again about Dr. James Hansen, but just keep him in mind. So many of the other heroes and the people who are making strides in understanding climate change are the thousands and thousands of scientists who are working through the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. They produce assessment reports about every 5 to 7 years. And the latest one was supposed to come out in 2018, but it's been postponed to 2021 or 22. They produce these types of reports along with the US Global Change Research Program, which I was involved with for several years, and identifying all of the risks and all of the projections in terms of what we're expecting climate change to do in the future, based on really hard evidence. So in terms of lowering emissions of carbon dioxide, we also need to use all the tools in our toolbox. We have many different alternative energy sources. We have wind, we have solar, which is the biggest one right now. We have hydroelectric, we have geothermal. Up in Lake County, they have a lot of geothermal sources, and they use that for power plants. But we also have things like wave energy, current energy, hydrogen fuel cells, which has not really come onto the market very much yet, and ocean thermal energy conversion, where we use the difference in temperature between the surface of the ocean and the deeper parts of the ocean to cause currents and then run turbines. So we have lots of things at our disposal. Many of them are in prototype mode at this point, but we're developing them more and more. We need to support and fund lots and lots of other options in our toolbox. But solar is the big one right now. And I think I need to read this to you. Every 2 minutes, the energy reaching the Earth from the sun is equivalent to the whole annual energy usage by humanity. I hope you understand that. That is enormous. It's huge. Basically a limitless source of energy, almost free, other than the devices that we use to capture it. And so I say we need to go as much solar as we can, and we actually are doing that right now. Let's take a look. So here's a California mandate. As of May of 18, the California Energy Commission ruled that all new homes after January 1st of this year, it just happened, must have solar built into their construction. So that's going to add about $9,500 to the cost of a home, but it will save almost $20,000 over the life of that installation. So there's all the new homes in California are getting solar now. And now we move from residential solar to grid scale solar. This is down in the Mojave Desert. These are massive areas that are using photoelectric cells, just like the residential electric. And these are motors right here. These are trackers that move 15 to 30 degrees, really capturing the best incident radiation from the sun as it moves across the sky. So these are grid scale photovoltaics. And the price of solar has been just plummeting, which is great for the marketplace, and it's great to help us solve this problem. Back in 1977, the price of a watt for solar was $76 a watt. Just incredible. That went down by 99% over the years since 1977 up until 2017. Now it's 25 cents a watt. Just incredible, incredible, allowing us to do more and more alternative energy sources in California and elsewhere. So what else do we have in the way of solar? We have what were called heliostats. These are also called solar power towers. And if you haven't seen these before, each one of these little white dots is a mirror. And that mirror reflects sunlight up to the top of one of these towers, which are 400 to 500 feet high. And they contain liquid sodium or molten salts, which also have a high heat capacity. And they store this heat energy till they can use it, say, at night when the sun is not shining. So there's enormous areas of the Mojave Desert that have this, and not just in California, not just in the US, but also around the world. We have these heliostat solar power towers. They're a tremendous gathering of solar energy. So let's take a look. Here's the Mojave Desert, and the gold bubbles are size for the different. The bubbles of the size represents the size of the installation, and so those are the photovoltaic installations, and the red bubbles are the heliostats or the power towers. So we have tremendous opportunities and installations here for solar power. And on March 5th of 2018, this utility grade solar energy met 50% of California's total electrical power demand for the first time. That's just fantastic. Now, this isn't necessarily true now because March is a time of year when we don't use quite as much energy. So this is going to vary, but we're increasing our solar component all the time, and hopefully we will equal or meet 50% for the rest of the year as well. So that's the deal on solar. Unfortunately, China is eating our lunch on solar. They're producing most of all the world's photovoltaic cells. We need to get on the bandwagon and start doing that and pumping out some jobs for the United States. Okay, next going on to wind, the second biggest issue or opportunity that we have. Wind now provides only 4.3% of the world's electric energy, which is actually up from 1% in 2006, so we're gaining on that. And Germany has the market on wind turbines. So they are doing it, we are not, but we should be. This is the San Gorgonio Pass in Palm Springs. It gives you an idea what a wind farm is like. I suspect most of you have seen the wind farms in Altamont Pass going towards Livermore. Those are a 576 megawatt plant and one of the oldest and largest wind turbine farms in the world. But we're not the only ones that are doing wind. This is off the coast of United Kingdom, England. This is what you see when you fly into London. You see these large expanses of wind turbine farms out in the ocean. Most of these are attached to the bottom. Actually, California is starting a new project, a prototype project, where we're going to have floating wind turbines off of our coast. So watch out for those. So each one of these red dots is actually another wind turbine farm out in the North Sea. And if we look a little closer to that, we'll see that each one of those little propellers was one of these red dots, and they show where the wind farms are. The pink area is actually a place where they have already been accepted to put in or are under construction for more wind farms all over the place. And the orange are applications for more wind farms. So this entire area in the North Sea is producing vast amounts of wind energy, which serves a lot of Europe and London and the United Kingdom as well, Amsterdam, Belgium, the Netherlands. So they've got it going. They're going gung-ho on more and more wind farms out there. So there's still some of those wind farms left, especially the old ones, the windmills. Now, once we get the energy, what are we going to do with it? We have to have some place to store the energy. Now, the solar power towers, the heliostats, did do some of that by storing heat overnight, so they could use it during the day, or heat overnight, so they could use it when the sun is not shining. But Tesla has produced the first home battery system to allow you to use it for 1 to 7 days of continuous power in case the grid went down. And Tesla, that's not bad. Tesla has also developed the first grid scale battery system. And the first one was and the largest one was in South Australia. And that's still the largest one out there. But Tesla's not the only one that's doing battery systems. There are like 7 or 8 other major companies that are developing these battery grid scale battery systems. So they're coming. These are 3 examples of those down here, but they're coming on board, and we will have grid scale battery systems, mark my word, in a very short period of time now that are going to be utilizable. So how can we help develop these alternative energy systems and get it into the functioning? So if you want to help, you could ask your honey to buy you a Tesla. Absolutely, I've asked mine, and so far I haven't gotten it. But I keep asking, and one of these days it might just appear in the driveway with a big red bow on it. So, or if somebody else wants to buy me one, I'd be happy to accept. But anyway, if you can't afford a Tesla or don't choose to buy a Tesla, you can buy any number of other types of electric vehicles, any type of hybrid. You can do a battery electric vehicle, you can do a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, you can do a fuel cell electric vehicle. In any way, any event, this is a chart produced by this website called What EV to Buy. What electric vehicle do you want to buy? And that's listed on my website, tomsuchanek.net. Wish I could say it right. But also, if you could just go to that website, they have the most recent information. From virtually every car manufacturer out there has some form of electric vehicle. So you can go to this chart and you can see how many miles you get from a single charge. And that will help you identify what the cost is over here, which is kind of reversible, and how much you want to pay for a vehicle and what brand and model and what aesthetics you want. But great chart. And they've also got the 2021 and 2022 models on there that they're projecting will come out on different electric vehicles. So go there and pick out the Tesla you would like to give me. Okay, sounds great. Oh, cutting edge, yes, almost forgot. If you want to learn more about the cutting edge alternative energy news, go to this website here, cleantechnica.com. It's a fantastic site. It really gives you all of the cutting edge information. Actually, the bleeding edge information is more like it, because you sign up for their news feed and they'll give you a little email each day. It used to be each week, now it's every day, sometimes twice a day, on all of the cutting edge, bleeding edge types of technologies that are out there that are going to help us get out of this predicament. So here we are, Elon Musk again, Tesla. Not only are they building cars, which I'd like one of those, Cindy, if you could, thanks, okay. Tesla is also making semi-trucks. As you know, Elon Musk loves speed. So this Tesla semi can go to 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. That's great. That's just for the cab though. If you have to attach the trailer to it, it's all of 20 seconds. So yeah, he loves his speed. But Tesla is not the only one that's building these semis. There's many other companies that are building it. Cummins, Daimler, Thor, Nikola is building several different types of electric vehicles. Walmart's even building some. So they're out there and they're good because these semis, they're basically good for truck farms because they can go from point A to point B. They jump off their cargo, recharge their battery. These are all electric, and get new cargo back to point A, dump their load, recharge, get back to point B, same thing, back and forth. Perfect application for electric vehicles. And this one here is in prototype mode, this Einride, and they're all thinking about going autonomous, in other words, driverless vehicles. And this one is supposed to be an autonomous one. I'm glad it's not on the road right now yet. If I saw this coming down the road, I think I'd get off on the next exit, really. Anyway, there's lots of them out there, and this is the direction we're going in the future. So not only semis, but the military. The military is really developing so much in terms of hybrid electric drive vehicles, people movers, product movers, tanks, machine gun carriers, fuel trucks, everything. They're turning into hybrid drive vehicles. And here's a new tank, the Ripsaw, which is actually all electric, and it's so quiet that you can sneak up on your enemy. They'll never know you're there. So just keep that in mind next time you need a tank. So at this point, I'd like to show you a little film. This is The Burden. I'm just going to show you the trailer for it, because this shows exactly how the military thinks about fuel, fossil fuels, and the stuff that they need to use to fuel their tanks and their planes and everything else, and how they're trying to get away from fossil fuels. So I'm going to do this right now.
I went to West Point. I studied a lot of highly skilled, advanced training. And when we got to Iraq, I was appalled at how little of it we actually employed, and just how much time was wasted on getting and protecting fuel.
We spend a lot of resources just moving fuel throughout the battlefield.
Everything they do relies on fuel.
The overdependence on fuels is affecting our environment.
The burden on the military will increase as they're forced to respond, because they are the best first responders in the world.
One of the reasons why we're in the Persian Gulf is to maintain the stability of oil.
Every time the price goes up so sharply, it does economic damage. Oil we use puts money in the hands of some countries that are problems for us.
The consumption of oil is a national security issue.
Heat, lights, vehicles going out, fuel is the lifeblood, and without fuel, these guys be sitting ducks.
In the next 10 years, the Air Force Academy plans to generate all of their own electricity through renewable sources.
There's a huge potential for the armed forces to be an innovation pull in energy.
Americans by nature, it's in our DNA to look for the next frontier.
We can prevent future generations from having to be deployed for fossil fuel.
Using these technologies is providing great value to the taxpayers.
How much more powerful would it be if we had sources of energy that weren't geographically dependent?
We'd break free of oil. We'd say to the Middle East, see if you can drink that stuff. If we applied it in energy, we win the triple play of this American century. We improve the national security, create jobs, and we clean up the air.
It's not a cost, it's an investment.
So in addition to semis, which go from point A to point B to point A, similarly, ferries do the same thing. And in New York and Washington State and San Francisco, they're doing just this. They're electrifying their ferries, making them hybrid drives or all electric drives. And so with the Hornblower Alcatraz ferry system, they've been hybridizing their ferries since 2009, and now virtually all of them are operating in this way. They put photoelectric cells on the roof and of the ferry. In addition to photoelectric cells, they're also doing hybrid drive wind turbines on the surface of this ferry as well. So they're on it, doing exactly what they should be doing, and hooray to Alcatraz ferry system. So here we are, the ultimate electric planes. The Harbor Air Company in Vancouver, BC, has now developed the first commercial electric airline. In December of 2019, just a few months ago, they have introduced and released this Beaver plane that takes, either fishermen or hunters out to the backcountry, and maybe 30 or 60 miles. But they're using all electric planes with 350 to 500 to 750 horsepower electric engines. And they're not the only ones. There's 7 more companies on the horizon that are developing electric planes. Airbus has a competition right now to see who can do the best job of that. And we're getting there, folks. We're getting there fast. And actually, in 20 years, we will likely have commercial airlines carrying 100 passengers. Imagine that. That's coming soon, hopefully. Now, in addition to reducing the emissions from all of the things that are burning carbon dioxide, we need to take out the carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere as well. Simply because once carbon dioxide gets into the atmosphere, it remains there for 500 to 1,000 years. We don't have 1,000 years to wait for that stuff to dissipate. So what we need to do is we need to remove it from the atmosphere directly. So there's many, many proposals and propositions to do this, and harebrained ideas as well. But some of the most promising ones are, and even this one's questionable, fertilize the ocean with iron to enhance CO2 uptake by marine plants. We're hesitant to do that on a large scale because we don't know what would happen to the ocean to do that. So alternatively, we have terrestrial carbon farming, either by planting forests or special crops. We've got geochemical soil manipulation. All these are in the pipeline, coming in and being tested. And then there's what we call direct air capture and storage. So I'm going to show you, this is a company called Global Thermostat. And what we're doing here is removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere back down, not literally into the smokestacks, but taking it out of the atmosphere rather than pumping it into the atmosphere. CO2 represents only 1 in 2,500 molecules in the air. That's 300 times less than what's being produced by these smokestacks. This company, Global Thermostat, is one of the early groups that are doing this process. So here's direct air capture. They're using solids to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. They have one plant that's a prototype in Menlo Park, another one in Huntsville, Alabama. And the first use of this process was developed by the Nazi scientists who used liquid sorbents to remove accumulations of CO2 in submarines for their seamen. These guys are taking it to the next level. And not only Global Thermostat, but we've got 7 of these companies that are actually doing very different approaches to developing direct air capture facilities. So we're on the hook here. We're developing the new technology, and hopefully we can get there faster than sooner. Okay, 50 years ago we had Apollo 11 to put a man on the moon, one step for man. And I've always been inspired by John F. Kennedy because that really says what we're trying to do today too. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to do this not because it's easy, but because it's hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. Absolutely. This is exactly what we need to be doing right now. Nothing can stop us. We have a will to do this, and we need political will to keep going and to accomplish it. So the tools to get a man on the moon did not even exist at the time, 50 years ago. It took NASA 8 years and 400,000 people to literally invent the rocket, the spaceship that could land on the moon, the spacesuits. All of that had to be invented from scratch. And what's interesting is that an iPhone today has more processing power than every NASA computer did in existence in the early 1960s. We have technology that can develop what we're doing. And so many companies are now doing that. They're inventing all of these things that we need for our future. They need to be supported. They need to be funded. So let's take another peek at where we've been. So here's the curve. Here's our James Hansen. So here's the curve that we saw before. Basically, bend the curve, stop the spread. Now here we talk about James Hansen again, that we saw earlier. He was warning us back in 1988 when the emissions were increasing. We did nothing at that point. And then came the year 2000. We still did nothing, where we could have reduced our carbon emissions by 2% per year. These are all model runs. Every single line indicates a different model run. And now here we are in 2020 again. We have to do this. If we start now, we have to reduce it by 5%. If we wait till 2030, we're almost won't be able to do it by the time major impacts happen. So where can we go? Let's talk about politics. Here's James Hansen, 1988, testifying before Congress. And just coincidentally, George H.W. Bush was also running his presidential campaign in 1988. And his slogan for his campaign was, "We'll fix the global warming effect with the White House effect." Now, George H.W. Bush did do a number of really good things for the environment. He served from 1989 to 1993, but he did not fix the global warming effect, and we're still working on that. So here's the politicians discussing global warming with rising sea levels. And sometimes that's the way it feels. They're ignoring what's happening, and we need to fix that. We need to change that. However, there is some hope. There is some good news. Nearly 1,500 governments worldwide have now declared climate emergencies, which allow them to dedicate themselves to solving these problems. So over 6,000 companies and 7,000 cities in 133 countries are implementing greenhouse gas emissions reduction actions and following the Paris Agreement protocols. That's fantastic. So that brings us to 2015, the Paris Climate Accord. So at that time, the Obama administration in 2015 led the agreement and pulled 194 countries together, actually 196 countries together, to start solving this problem. That agreement was ratified in 2016, the year later, and unfortunately, the year after that, the Trump administration came in and started to pull us out of the Paris Accord. Now, November 4th of last year was the first time that could be implemented, and we began to pull out. November 4th of this year, we will be out of the Paris Accord. We need to fix that. And we really need a new world leader to help solve this climate crisis. None of the other world leaders are stepping up, none of them. So we need someone out there who is going to solve this problem and put the priorities straight so that we don't have to suffer in the future. So there's another way that we can implement this as well, and that's potentially dealing with subsidies through fossil fuel companies. Subsidies in fossil fuel companies from 191 countries provide 80% of subsidies to coal and oil companies. Now, in 2017, they gave $5.2 trillion worth of subsidies to these coal and oil companies. That's 6.5% of global GDP, gross domestic product. Largest subsidies are being given by China, 1.4 trillion. Second largest subsidies by the US, 649 billion. Why? Why are we giving all of these subsidies to these very rich oil and coal companies? It makes no sense because they're making huge, enormous profits. We could put some of that to work. So with only 2% of that subsidy, $5.2 trillion, we could get $104 billion and put that towards, oops, sorry about that. Put that towards a green economy and supporting the development of alternative energy sources, and immediately produce probably 20 to 25 million jobs just right away. So let's think about how we can do subsidies. Another track is through divestments and investments. Not sure how many people know BlackRock, but BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager with $6.9 trillion in assets and the world's biggest owner of fossil fuel companies. In January of this year, BlackRock is putting climate change and sustainability at the core of their investment strategy. Imagine that, BlackRock. They're divesting investments away from coal, and they're ramping up pressure on polluters. Not only BlackRock, but the European Investment Bank, which is the largest public bank in the world, has stopped lending for fossil fuel projects. Amazing. They've allocated 8 billion euros to reduce carbon pollution, and they've committed 1 trillion euros over the next decade to combat climate change. So we're making progress. We're making progress by divestments and investments in the right direction. So let's summarize. Again, just as we did with COVID, we need to use all the tools in our toolbox. For climate change, two main things. We need to lower CO2 and we need to remove it, CO2 emissions, and we need to remove it from the atmosphere. So in terms of lowering CO2, we need to reduce or eliminate our use of fossil fuels. We need to develop alternative and renewable energy sources. We need to electrify everything. We need to develop residential and grid-scale battery systems as well. And in terms of removing existing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, We need to look at all the other options that we have, carbon farming for trees and crops and soil manipulation. And we need to do carbon reduction facilities like global thermostat, direct air capture. So let's think about that. So the bottom line again here for climate change is we need to put a price on carbon. We need to promote and support climate change research and solutions. We need to reduce and eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. We need to divest away from fossil fuels. We need to retool our economy to a green economy. And we need to develop international cooperation and treaties through the Paris Climate Accord. And ultimately, we need to vote. So what can we do personally? We need to reduce our carbon footprint. Everything helps. And I have a list of about 50 things on my website that you can go to and see if you can make a difference individually. Now, in addition to that list, there are archived presentations on my website. Dana Nucitelli and I taught an 11-week climate change course, which is also archived there. Every lecture is there. You can see that all on my website, tomsuchanek.net. And we have to recognize that none of us can do everything, but each of us can do something. So in terms of doing something, we can do something individually here, but there's other things that we can do as well. We need serious political will, and you know what that means. The most critical actions are educate yourself and your tribe, those peeps that you hang out with. Communicate with your mocks. That's not moccasins. That's members of Congress. And remember, public opinion is everything. Think what's been happening right now with public opinion out in the streets. Hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating. If people are angry enough and engaged enough and interested enough and committed enough, they can do anything. So I'll tell you a story here. This one individual piece of information right here. I've talked to quite a few members of Congress and their staff about this information thing. So every piece of information that a congressional member receives is tallied and documented. And they think that each one of those pieces of data is worth 100 to 1,000 times, because there's those number of people that would never think of communicating with their members of Congress. So you as an individual can really make a difference. Why do you think they're important and they want to document that? Because they want re-election. They're doing this because they want to get re-elected. So you can influence that process. Number 3, vote. Absolutely vote in all local, state, and national elections for those individuals who will work hard to solve these global crises. Now, my wife and I belong to a group called Postcards to Voters. In the last few years, we've written with our group 3,500 postcards during the last election. And if we take that multiplier that I just showed you, 3,500 postcards times 1,000, that's 3.5 million data points. Think of it. That's extremely influential out there, just like the people demonstrating in the streets. So keep that in mind. And hopefully we can put more people in Postcards to Voters. Okay, in the science parlance, N equals the thing that you have in your experiment. We have one of those. Let's not lose it. Let's vote. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. That was great. I think we have a couple polls left, closing polls, and then we're going to get to the Q&A.
All right, let's do it.
All righty, that was great. All right, I'm going to launch the last of the 2 polls. And the question is, what are you willing to do to help solve the COVID-19 crisis? And please select all that apply. Stay at home, protest in the streets, communicate with your members of Congress, follow the CDC and WHO guidelines for your area, or vote. All right, Tom, what say you?
90% at home, awesome. Protest in the streets, not so much. Communicate with your members of Congress, that's awesome, 59%. Follow the guidelines, 96%, and vote, right up over 90%, fantastic. Thank you all, I appreciate your interest, and Let's see what we can do.
What are you willing to do to help solve the climate change crisis? Please select all that apply. Buy an electric car, plant trees in your backyard, communicate with your members of Congress, follow the recommendations of our current U.S. administration, or vote. And if I had a sixth choice, it would be for Cindy Suchanek to get Tom a Tesla. But I'll let you go on these 5.
All right, half of you would buy an electric car. Most of you, same, would plant trees, communicate with your members of Congress. Great, almost 70%. Follow the recommendations of your current administration, 7%, not very many, and vote 99%. Fantastic. That is a great piece of information. I so appreciate that.
All right, so you ready, Tom? You ready for some questions?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. This is from Josh. Is there any truth to the fact that cows are responsible for a lot of global warming by producing huge amounts of methane?
Okay, Josh, I think you're talking about cow farts, right? I assume that. Yes, actually, cows do produce a lot of methane, but maybe not the way you think. It's actually not cow farts. Cows are ruminants, and they have one stomach, but they have 4 compartments in the stomach. And first they chew the grass, which goes down into the first compartment, the rumen. And then there's bacteria in there that actually produce methane. And then they regurgitate that back into their mouth. They chew it some more, but they also do burping or belching. And that's where the methane comes from. It's not from the other end, the back end, although a little bit comes out there too, but 95% of it comes out the front end when they belch. So actually it's fairly important in terms of a greenhouse gas. There's about, I think, 1.5 billion cattle on the earth, and each one of those cattle produces about 25 to 100 gallons of methane each cow per day, each cow each day. That's a lot of methane. So in reality, anthropogenic methane, they constitute about 28% of the anthropogenic methane, and that is about, if you look at the globally, it's about 2 to 3% of the global methane is produced by cattle. So maybe we need to stop eating cattle, huh? I don't know.
All right.
But there you go. It's the front end. Is the
All right,
short.
Tom, thank you. Here's one from Millie. Recent news indicated that because of our economic slowdown associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, carbon emissions have declined 17% globally. How much of an effect will that have on climate change?
It will have an effect, and actually the 17% is a daily figure. So each day during this pandemic, when people have been stranded at home, not driving, transportation is about 40% of our emissions in California. But now that the businesses are closed and manufacturing has been closed and transportation has been shut down, yes, it's dropped dramatically. However, that's only for a relatively short period of time. So if now that we're opening up, if we didn't have any more, and we average that over the whole year, would probably be 5 to 7% drop this year. But as you saw from the charts and the graphs and lowering the spread, that would not meet what we need to do in this present year. So we need to do other things to really lower that. And yeah, I think we can do it. I think we can do it. But yeah, it's a tough one. If we continue and we open up again and we have more COVID coming on board, we may lower the global concentration of carbon dioxide, but then we're going to be risking all of those COVID cases and have more deaths. So it's one or the other.
All right. Here's a softball question from, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Gary Ray. Are the slides going to be available so we can spread this info via social media? Now, before you answer, we will be providing you with a edited version of today's webinar that you will have. But as far as the slides are concerned, Tom, do you want to make those available too?
Probably not the slides, but if someone has a specific reason that they need specifically the slides, I mean, the presentations will be online, no question about it. But if they have a specific need, just email me.
Okay. And Margaret wants to know, I'm curious about writing postcards to members of Congress and to voters. Can you give us more information about that and how she can sign up?
Okay, sure. Thank you, Margaret. As I mentioned, we belong to a group called Postcards to Voters, and we do write to the members of Congress and to prospective voters and those that may or may not vote in the next election. So if you're interested in doing that, just contact me through my website, and I can either sign you up or we can discuss how you and your friends can participate in that process. Thank you.
Here's one from Catherine. What caused the big rise in CO2 in the 1970s and the 1980s? Was it industrialization in Asia and Africa?
I'm not sure that I know what caused that particular rise. It definitely were increasing industrialization during that time, but not sure. I think right after World War II, we had a big, huge leap, but I'm not sure about that one. Sorry.
Okay, here's one from Lorraine. I've read that methane gas, despite its lower levels, have a greater climate change effect. If so, why are we not looking at this too?
Very good question. Yes, methane is actually about 20 to 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. But the difference is, as I mentioned earlier, carbon dioxide remains in the atmosphere somewhere between 500 and 1,000 years or even more. But methane only remains in the atmosphere about 12 years. And therefore, if you look at the time frame that it's effective, it doesn't even compare with carbon dioxide over the long run. If you took a short period of time, yes, carbon dioxide would be, methane would be definitely more influential and more powerful. And there's definitely moves afoot. There's many programs that are trying to reduce the methane from fracking systems, reduce the methane. I mean, a lot of these things are happening in the Arctic as well from the tundra. Tundra is warming and it's releasing huge amounts of methane there. So the only way we're going to stop that is to really lower the temperature of the Earth or stop what's happening in terms of global warming. But you're absolutely right. Methane is more powerful, but it's of a shorter nature than carbon dioxide.
Here's one from Wayne. Tom, can you comment on the probability of accelerating global warming due to the increase of methane releases from melting permafrost?
Well, I just sort of mentioned that, and it's definitely an issue because we may pass a tipping point at some point here, where when the snow melts off of the Arctic and off the tundra, that creates a ground that is much darker in color, like grass or dirt. And when that happens, the albedo of the Earth is much darker and it absorbs more heat. So it's a sort of a double tipping point where the worse it gets to melt the snow, the worse that the heat absorption on the Earth is going to attract. So you're going to get a warmer Earth in the long run. So yes, it's a double whammy.
Okay, here's one from Zachary. Do the trends with coal and oil switching to less carbon intense methods of energy production, such as natural gas renewable, give you hope? Second part, how close are we to phasing our coal in the US or phasing out coal in the US?
I'll answer the second part first. We have been decreasing our coal production and employment over the last 20 to 25 years. So it's been going down, down, down. There's really nothing that's going to save it because coal is a much more expensive way to go. Alternative energy sources are much cheaper and they're much more effective. There's automation happening in all systems, so you're getting rid of the employment aspect of it. And right now, even though we're shutting down our coal mines and companies, China is actually buying our coal and burning it, which is too bad because China is the worst country in the world that's increasing their carbon dioxide, and a lot of that is due to the burning of U.S. coal. So hopefully we can change that, and you can see by the divestments and investments that are happening And with BlackRock refusing to do stuff with coal anymore, we are getting rid of coal very quickly. And it's really going to help the long run, transforming and transitioning to electric alternative energy sources.
Got two left before we bring on Ken for some final words. Linda wants to know, I'm sorry, Dennis, this is Dennis. When we charge automobiles on the grid, aren't we shifting the source of carbon from the auto engine to the power plant?
Absolutely. I mean, just the source itself. So you have to be aware of, I mean, even if you buy an electric car, first of all, if you run a fossil fuel car, a gasoline car, you are burning the most amount of carbon dioxide out into the atmosphere. But even if you buy an electric car, you are still dependent on where you're getting that electricity from. If it's from a coal plant, then you're probably not doing much good because it's still the coal that's being burned to produce that electricity. However, if you get the electricity from a solar plant or a wind-powered turbine or, hydroelectric or any of those other sources for that matter, then you're really helping the problem. So, I mean, there are costs involved in carbon dioxide produced when you're even manufacturing the vehicle. But in terms of running the vehicle, you need to make sure that you can run it in a place that has reasonably non-fossil fuel sources to burn to have it be most effective.
Okay, last question. This is from Susan. Isn't it better for the environment that I keep my 2016 Subaru Outback than to buy a new electric car?
Good question. And that sort of reflects on the answer I just gave. It just depends on where you live, Susan. If you live in coal country and they're burning coal, probably wouldn't make much sense for you to buy an electric car. If you're doing that in California, I think it would make sense to buy an electric car. The investment that you make is good because you will be able to, it doesn't have to be a Tesla, by the way. So you don't have to spend an enormous amount of money on an electric vehicle. But any electric vehicle would do in terms of California because we have so much of the proportion of our energy is coming from electric sources, alternative energy sources, as opposed to fossil fuel sources. So I would encourage you to try to buy an electric car, but stay in California.
Well, Tom, I want to thank you as one of the hosts and the moderator for a fantastic job. As I said earlier, before I bring Ken on, and Ken, come on, you're on deck. You can turn your webcam on. Any final comments, Tom, you'd like to share with the audience?
I just thank them for their patience.
Google Sacramento Renaissance Society and go to our website and explore our myriad of lifelong learning opportunities. I want you all to have a great weekend. Enjoy the beautiful summer weather. And until next week, I'm Ken Cross, and thank you for attending today's presentation by Dr. Tom Suchanek.
Hi.
Fighting wildfires is dangerous work. Firefighters and pilots like us put our lives on the line every day to protect Californians. But there's a new danger that we're seeing more and more.
Hobby drones flying in a fire area pose a serious threat to us, our firefighters, and the public below.
A collision with a hobby drone could cause damage, injury, or even death.
We need your help. Don't make our jobs even more dangerous.
Remember, if you fly, we can't. Learn more from CAL FIRE at fire.ca.gov.
Election officials work hard to maintain the integrity, security, and privacy of elections in Nevada County. Every registered voter in the county will receive a vote-by-mail ballot in the mail. Have you ever wondered what happens to your ballot when you send it in? Returned ballots are received at the elections office where they're processed and counted. Each voter's ballot envelope has a unique barcode that gives you credit for voting. This ensures that each voter can only vote once. Every signed ballot envelope is compared to signatures on file for the voter in our database. If your signature matches, your ballot moves on to the next step. If your signature is challenged, you'll be notified and given instructions on how to correct the issue. The two most common reasons a ballot envelope is challenged are the envelope isn't signed or the signature doesn't match the voter's record. A challenged ballot will be counted once the problem is corrected. You can check the status of your ballot at mynevadacounty.com/elections. When voter signatures are verified, ballot envelopes are opened and the ballot is removed, unfolded, and prepared for processing through scanners, which total up the votes. Results are tabulated and released after the polls close on election night. When you vote by mail, you can be assured that your vote counts and that your ballot is both secure and private. If you have any questions, contact the Nevada County Elections Office or visit us online.
Hi, I'm Sheriff Shannon Moon, and even though it just rained, it's important to remember we're still in the middle of fire season. Keeping this in mind, your local police chiefs and I would like to introduce you to a new sound we will be using to notify you and your family of an immediate evacuation order. This new high-low system will not replace our code red notifications. It is simply another way in which we can notify you and your family of an emergency in your area. Situational awareness means using all of your senses during an emergency.
Eyes, nose, and ears.
The high-low siren is a new sound to help you stay safe in an emergency.
It is specifically designed to alert you to an immediate evacuation order.
If you hear this sound, it means only one thing: evacuate immediately. You will only hear this sound during an evacuation order.
If time permits, officers and deputies will be responding to your area and using PAs and going door to door to do evacuations. But if you hear this sound, you can help them in doing their job safely and evacuate the area immediately.
If you miss the announcement or have questions, please do not call 911. Immediately institute your family's evacuation plan. Contact 211 if you have questions, or go to a trusted media source once you are safely evacuated.
Remember, 911 is only for emergencies.
The Nevada County Sheriff's Office, Grass Valley Police Department, and Nevada City Police Department have all installed these sirens in their patrol vehicles. So if you hear this siren, it means one thing and one thing only: evacuate, and evacuate immediately.
Nevada County is now part of a special pilot program instituted by Napa County to be better prepared for evacuations. State, regional, and local officials who made this happen now welcome you, our community members, to the team.
Your job? Know the sound and know what it means.
Evacuate.
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 Hi there, I'm Katrina Schneider, and I'm a river scientist and river skills teacher, and I also love to play at the river. 12 years ago, started doing some camps that teach people what we call river literacy, how you can read the water so you can understand where it's awesome places to play, what the river's doing, but also you can find the really safe spots, and you can basically read the water. So I'd love to give for you all the main gist of what we cover in those camps. The areas that we'll cover here right now are to look, grip, and protect. The first concept of look. It's We are so blessed here at the Yuba. We have these incredible waters where you can see the bottom, you can see all around you. Incredible visibility, wonderful with a mask and snorkel. But it's super important when you're playing that you're actually looking for other things too. Wherever you are, whatever you're going to do, we all have different choices of what we do at the river. It's super important you scout first. So if you're tempted, you're one of those people who likes to jump off rocks, you should be in the water ahead of time with a mask and looking very carefully for any obstructions. If you're like me who loves to go under large boulders and these beautiful, beautiful large openings underneath full of fish, then you also want to always look and make sure that it's totally clear. This river is very dynamic, changes a lot. And last year we had very high flows on the river that move large rocks and other obstructions that can end up being in our favorite play spots. So the best way to look and make sure you can be safe in those spots is looking from downstream up first. That way the current can't pull you into anything, and you can make sure everything's in the clear. Point number 2, grip. We're, again, beautiful granite rocks here. We love to lay on them. They're so soft, they're so nurturing, they're really wonderful. Guess what? They're also, of course, slippery. So when hopping from rock to rock, it can be quite easy to slip and lose your footing. And you might come into a place that actually has a very large hazard or just simply hurt yourself. It's also when we're following a buddy, they've gone before us and the rock gets wet. So when we jump, it's not the same jump that they did. It's super important as you're at the river, if you can move along, use 3 points of contact. Move yourself along as quickly as you need, but it's incredible how much it serves us for our stability. Every year, someone falls and gets seriously either injured or dies simply from slipping on rock. And a third concept, protect. So our bodies, they're bizarrely shaped. I mean, look at all these things coming out. They're just set to get snagged into things. And some of the places we're playing or some of the places we might find ourselves have some rocks that have really small openings, and we can easily get what's called entrapped. Even at low flows, it's very easy to get trapped. It's really quite bizarre. So what's important for us, if you find yourself in a situation where you have large moving water or rocks underneath that can have entrapments, you can't see them, it's super important you protect yourself. And what I mean by that is if you end up either accidentally or intentionally in one of those spots, ball up, get those limbs in. Don't be shoving those into rocks. Another very important part of protection is protect each other. Some people are pushing themselves to keep up with others and doing things that they're not quite in their body. Some people you might see are just doing things that are just plain silly that can harm themselves or harm others. Super important you carry forward to protect each other while at the river. So great. Thank you all so much for watching this video and loving and caring for the Yuba. And just remember these concepts next time you go down to the river. Just remember to look, grip, and protect, and enjoy yourself. Have a great time at the river and be safe.
As high pressure stays in place,
Someone broke his head.
Fish in many California water bodies contain mercury at levels that can be harmful to human health if eaten.
Mama, what's that sign?
Oh, well, it looks like it's about fish in California lakes and reservoirs. So it looks like some fish are high in mercury and some fish are lower in mercury. Oh, here we go. Women 18 to 45 years, so that's me. And then kids, that's you. We can have less than older women and men. So Papa can have more fish than us.
What kind of fish can we eat?
Well, it looks like we can have more rainbow trout. That must be low in mercury. Oh, but you and I, we can't have any black bass, any carp, or any brown trout.
Papa brings us fish.
Yeah, he does. We should take a picture of this for him. Oh, and then look, there's a website we can go to for more information. That's good. All right, well, let's see if we can find some fish now.
The amount of fish you can safely eat depends on where you fish, what fish you eat, and who you are.
One of our goals as an agency is to bring that awareness that in our community there's still needs out there for firewood, especially in the senior population, and that as together as a community, we can meet that need.
Each year gets a little harder and a little harder, but just seeing this, I feel like one of the lucky ones.
Ever since the first moment we got together, I think farming was what we both wanted to do.
We researched pigs and found the Mangalitsa breed.
We fell in love with the way they look, that they're not genetically modified, they're a Hungarian breed.
It likes to go out and forage for the roots and the grasses and the acorns.
They get to do whatever they want to do here. Within the boundaries of the fence line that they have, they've got acres and acres to roam on and just lay in the sun, go sit in the mud puddle, come eat if they want to.
We spend an hour or two probably with the herd every day, just walking fence lines and checking feed. And
saying hi and rubbing bellies and just making sure everybody's safe.
They're very happy pigs, that's for sure.
Having a heritage breed pig says that you're dedicating yourself to something that takes a lot longer and that you're really caring for the animal. It is really completely different than anything else you've ever eaten pork-wise. Oh, what I love about the Mangalitsa pork is actually the fat content that it has. That fat just makes the meat taste so amazing. You want to get a little bit of it in every single bite that you have. Hi, I'm Ellen.
And I'm Jesse, and we're Cosmic Roots Ranch.
Did you know that embers from a wildfire can fly over 1 mile and can smolder for days before starting a secondary fire? It only takes one ember to bring wildfire to your home. Learn about defensible space and how you can make your home more fire resistant at readyforwildfire.com.
Hi, my name's Heather from 211 Connecting Point. 211 is your starting point for information and assistance in Nevada County. All you got to do is Dial 211 and give us a call, or 1-877-847-0499. 211 connects you to all kinds of community services and support. So if you need food, housing, transportation, legal assistance, veteran services, give us a call and we'll connect you. That's what we do. We connect you to information and assistance. So 211, just dial 211 from your phone, or 877-847-0499, or you can find us on the web at www.211connectingpoint.org. Thanks so much.
Got back from a house down in Penn Valley. They had 2 huge apple trees. We gleaned 286 pounds. We are at Interfaith Food Ministry. They serve 8,000 clients every single month, and every one of these families can come twice a month and they get a full shopping cart of groceries.
I've stood in those lines, and fresh fruit and vegetables especially are amazing. And it's been so much fun. I mean, it's just fun.
If you have fruit trees in your home, give Sierra Harvest a call, and we will get the volunteers to come and glean for you on a day that works for you. If you want to be a gleaner and be a volunteer, there's also an online application.
Daily tea ritual looks like this. I prepare the hot water, I set the tone, and then I focus on preparing the brew appropriately, pouring the water appropriately, and drinking it in a relaxed and unhurried way so that I'm just creating kind of rhythm. I think tea has a lot to offer people in their daily life. It has so many health properties, just in terms of the body, the antioxidants, vitamins, the amino acids, but especially just being present in the moment and using tea as a vehicle to practice that presence. So the products that I sell at the co-op are 3 varieties of tea. One is a white tea, one is a winter pick green tea, and one is a black tea. At the same time, we're developing our own tea that we're growing in the region and will eventually be available through the Jade Summit brand.